Hi, I'm Kodjo, the Christian Tech Guy, and today I'm going to be doing a kind of explanation video as to why iOS or Apple devices get more and quicker updates than Android devices. Now before I start going through it, I'm just going to define some terms so that I guess it makes the listening experience a little bit more easier. So when I talk about OEMs, that means original equipment manufacturers, and that will be companies such as HTC, Samsung, Sony, LG, Motorola, etc. That could also apply to Apple, but in this case, when I talk about Apple, I'll be talking just about Apple and iOS, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about the iPhone, iPads, etc. I may also use the term, I will also use the term skins. And when I'm talking about that, even though it's not really technically correct, what I'm referring to is the software that the OEMs put on top of their smartphones. So for example, for HTC it's Sense, for Samsung it is TouchWiz, for LG it's the GUI. So when I talk about those, when I talk about skins, that's what I'm talking about, the softwares that these companies put on top of Android onto their own smartphone lineup. So as many of you will know, Apple devices do generally get software updates much quicker and for a longer period of time compared to their Android smartphone counterparts. So for example, when you buy an iPhone, you almost are guaranteed that you will get an update for the lifetime of its contract, so the 24 months, and normally even for longer than that, so 3 years or 4 years later. Granted, it may not have some of the features that the later updates bring, but you generally do have that software on your smartphone or on your tablet. Whereas for Android smartphones, even for the flagship devices, there isn't that same kind of expectation or anticipation. You may get it for 2 years or for the lifetime of your smartphone contract, but you generally know after that you may not be getting the latest firmware update. And there are pros and cons to it, but I won't really be focusing on that too much in this video. I'm just going to be saying why that is the case. So what we need to know is that there's generally been a format of these OEMs bringing their smartphones to the market, and that generally has been that they make developer editions for their smartphones. They make unlocked editions, and then they also make models which carriers take on themselves. So when I talk about carriers, I'm talking about the companies who sell phone contracts and phones. So for example, O2, EE, Vodafone, Free in the UK, and in America that would be companies like Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, etc. So for Android smartphones, there's generally various models that are out there. Some of them are region specific, so you'll have the UK Unlocked Edition and American Unlocked Edition, but then you also have the ones that the carriers take on themselves and put on their own branding. And if you want to know whether a carrier has branded your smartphone, all you have to do is when you turn it off and turn it back on, look to see if you get the branding on the loading screen, and you know that it's been a branded smartphone. So what this therefore creates is different stratas that the OEM has to go through in order to get the software onto your smartphone. So there are various levels that must be jumped through for most Android devices in order to get an update. So first of all, with Android, it's an open source piece of software, but it's made by Google. So they year after year release a new software version of Android, which they put out onto their Nexus products first, and that's called stock Android. So that's the stock operating system that's made by Google. They then of course send them to their partners, and it's an open source, so all their partners and other OEMs can take it and then apply it, of course, onto their own smartphones and onto their skins. And so that creates another layer of a time factor to it. So Google sends out the software, all the APIs to the OEMs. They then take it and change certain things so that they have their own distinctive look. So for example, HTC takes the software and then applies their own look and skin onto it, which is Sense. Samsung does the same. They take it and then apply TouchWiz features that they have from their smartphones on top of the software that Google has sent. Now when they've done that, the first products that the OEMs will be able to send them to will be their unlocked smartphones, as there isn't another barrier which they have to go through to send it to them. So if you have an unlocked or developer edition smartphone of Android smartphone, you know you're going to get you're going to get an early update. But even then, it's still region specific, so you may not get it as fast as maybe the same phone from America, for example, compared to the UK. After that, there's then the final kind of hurdle that must be gone through, and that's for the carrier versions or the carrier branded models of those smartphones. And this can vary very significantly depending on how much software these carriers decide to put onto or software bloatware, as it's often known as, decide to put onto the smartphones. And they also check to see whether or not it confines to their kind of standards of stability or safety in terms of security risks that must be met. So that adds another time factor, and it also adds some other features which you may not even consider necessary before you can eventually get the update that may have come out 3 to 4 months ago from Google, for example. So that's all the hoops that have to be jumped through for Android smartphones. Now when you compare that to iOS or Apple smartphones, there's almost no hoops. Apple, when they when their iPhones got very popular and they brought them to market, I think by the third iteration, so I think the iPhone 3GS, they decided to only sell unlocked editions of their smartphones. There is no branded versions, and there's not too much region specific models as well. They just make sure it has all the right radios so that you can connect to 4G or LTE or all the bands that your SIM card or your SIM carrier requires is in that model. So there aren't very many region specific models, and they have also skipped the carrier or they do not allow carriers to put their own software onto their smartphones. So once Apple has got a software update ready, they can send it straight, as they own and create the software. There isn't any other hurdle. There aren't any other OEMs that Apple uses. They make their own devices, they make their own software, and they can therefore send them straight to their iPhones. Now that is how they are able to get it from their offices straight to iPhone users or iPad users without any delay, without any additional software which you may have seen in the keynote or in the conference which was discussing it. You know what you're going to get essentially. You don't have to worry about an OEM changing or adapting something that maybe you liked from the conference that put out or set forth the features that the software is going to have. So essentially, Apple went against the norm of how the industry works in terms of enabling carriers to adapt their products to therefore make it more of to make more from selling it to customers. They've completely backtracked that, and because their iPhones are so popular, these carriers are in a almost weaker position to say no, we won't take your handsets, because they know they will sell, and the profit margin on it is very high as well because of how expensive iPhones are. So what I would suggest then, if you do have an Android smartphone and you really want to get updates quick, but you do not have the capital or the money to buy an unlocked version from the carrier itself, or from Amazon, for example, what you can do in the UK at least, I'm not sure what the situation is in the country where you are, what you can do in the UK, for example, is do what I did. So I bought my phone from the now defunct company Dialer Phone, which was a sister company for Phones for You. But what is still remaining now is Carphone Warehouse. If you get a phone from Carphone Warehouse, it is unlocked because the OEM sends them the device that they require and keeps it unlocked so that any SIM that the person buying it will have, or will contract the person will take out with it, can just be slotted in without having to worry about getting a branded version instead and having all that hassle. So if you want really quick updates, I would suggest going to Carphone Warehouse to get a contract, or just buying the phone unlocked from the OEM in the first place. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed that kind of explanation. If you have any other questions or even anything to add, please put them in the comments below. Please share, like and subscribe to this channel as well. I've been Kojo, the Christian Tech Guy. Thank you and God bless.